Yes, thank you very much, Regina, for that. And also thank you, Alexandra, for and others for that welcome. It's great to be back on the scene here. And I think what I wanted to say was that actually the origins of the journal go back much further than the uh, 2004 ICOM General Conference, and of course, the first issue appearing in the spring of 2006. But going back about more than 20 years ago, there was discussion within UNESCO especially about establishing an international instrument for the protection of the intangible heritage. But this was, shall we say, in amongst friends, hijacked by the information division of UNESCO and people associated with it. When ICOM, I was vice president at the time, when we asked to become involved in the study and preparations for it, we were refused. We were not even allowed into the meetings. I remember there was a conference going on in the basement of the Middle East building of UNESCO in the next room to us, and we weren't allowed to go into it. But it was argued that the tangible heritage was nothing to do with the intangible heritage. Fortunately, well, two things. One is that the executive of UNESCO, of ICOM, refused to accept this. And secondly, of course, we had the wonderful opportunity to come to Seoul for the 2004 General Conference. And our colleagues in Korea were determined that the major theme of this should be the intangible heritage, and really tell us what Korea and some of the other countries nearby, particularly Japan, China, and Taiwan, were doing within this field. So we had that extraordinarily successful conference at which we, I think, turned the direction of ICOM into this much broader field. Certainly it was a major issue, almost like the, well, not as controversial as the current argument about redefinition of museums, but it was for many traditionalists in ICOM, extending into the intangible heritage was something very new and which they were quite worried about. Towards the end of the General Conference, of course, our Korean hosts announced that the government was prepared to support for 3 years an international journal on the intangible heritage, which would be run in cooperation with ICOM through the National Folk Museum. And from that point on, we got involved in preparing this. I think that what ICOM has done is to broaden very much the ideas, the concepts of what constitutes the intangible heritage. If I make just one particular example, I was fortunate to have an invitation to have a spell as a visiting professor at the University of Rio de Janeiro shortly after my retirement from full-time university work. And there I saw the most interesting work that was being done by the university's astronomy department and in the Astronomical Museum, in which they had looked at the whole of the world and brought together information about all the different views of how the Earth came into being, the whole of different creation myths, myths and so on, and put this together in a fascinating exhibition. And when I got back to England, the first thing I did was to say, look, this is a field that the whole question of cosmology, about the development of belief systems, going back to 2000 BC or earlier, right through to different present day views. This is something which is a central part of intangible heritage, which links to other aspects of tradition and belief systems and so on. And colleagues there put together a paper for the journal, which broadened that area, that field out. Also, we've seen a big increase in interest in traditional practice and traditional foods and so on. In fact, if you look at the current list, there seem to be rather more things about different aspects of traditional food and so on. The Mediterranean diet grabs something like 20 countries across the center of North Africa, Europe, and Asia. So, and this again is something which is, we've seen the idea of intangible heritage broadening and broadening and broadening there. And I think the journal has in fact played an important part in that. We had to start off completely from scratch, and I do pay tribute to the staff and the designers of the museum in starting off with something I think was first time they'd tried to do anything on that scale in English rather than Korean. And we did manage to put this together. And in fact, it's interesting to see that 15 years on, the basic concepts and the design, presentation, even a rather strange typeface, which I couldn't understand, that turned out to have been specially designed for putting notices on railway platforms in Germany in 1908, and which happened to be I think the one English language script that the printer had. But the thing, all sorts of things like that still continues through. You can see the new issue is very much part of that tradition, but it has expanded a lot. Finally, I would like to pay tribute to my successors. I edited it for 3 years, and then Amar Galler, and of course now Alexandra Cummings has been gone long beyond the what she ever expected she was going to be landed with. It's one of those things, if you're so good, Alexandra, you will never be able to get out of it unless you end up in the graveyard or something. You're there for life, unfortunately. I did manage to get out, but the one person I do want to mention, who joined the journal for just 2 or 3 days to help me with sorting out the English. I mean, I think the first issue had contributions from people with 11 native languages. And my wife, Pam, Dr. Pam Inder, got to work on this and helped out with her using her expertise, which she'd had used in university and so on text editing. And 15 issues later, she's still there. She's never managed to escape from that. And in fact, only about less than 2 weeks ago, she was still doing proofreading and so on of the final version, and frequent consultation with Alexandra and back. So I think that that's another person whose name shouldn't be forgotten in the history of this. But I'm absolutely delighted, first of all, that ICOM managed to get involved in intangible heritage. Secondly, that the journal was established at all. And thirdly, that it has been such an enormous and very success and influence through the past 15 years. And I trust it's going to live even longer than I am. Thank you very much indeed, everybody.